She walks in spiritual discernment. There is a sacred stillness in a woman who walks beneath the gaze of heaven. She does not need to be loud to be heard. She does not perform her worth, nor parade her strength. For long ago, in a moment, the world did not witness, the Lord leaned in close and whispered to her soul, "You are mine," and that was enough. That whisper became her anchor. That truth became her shield. And now she walks not with arrogance, but with assurance, not with fear, but with divine foresight. She carries herself with the calm of one who knows that she is watched over, guarded, chosen. There's a weight to her presence, but it is not heavy. It is holy. She sees what others miss. While the crowd is drawn to charisma, she is drawn to character. While the world applauds smooth speech and polished personas, she listens for the sound of truth beneath the noise. She's not easily impressed. She's not moved by appearances, because she has learned, oh, yes, she has learned that wolves wear wool, and lies come dressed in smiles. She waits, she watches, not with suspicion, but with clarity. There is a knowing within her, a discernment not taught in seminaries or learned in textbooks, but whispered to her spirit in the midnight hour. She knows now that not everyone who says God bless you is blessed. Not everyone who quotes scripture walks with the Spirit. Some people wear Sunday clothes and carry Monday poison, and she no longer takes every kind word as kindness, nor every warm welcome as safety. Because she's walked through places that looked like light but were really shadows. She's sat at tables set with charm, only to find deceit in the dishes. She has eaten the bitter bread of betrayal and sipped the wine of regret, and in that pain she learned the language of the Spirit. So now she listens when the atmosphere shifts. She pays attention when her peace is disturbed. She trusts the divine interruption, that sacred restlessness in her soul that says, "This is not for you," and she moves. She moves even when she doesn't have all the evidence. She walks away even when the facts say stay, because she knows the voice of her shepherd, not loud, not forceful, but still, and steady, and sacred. Her discernment is not a performance. It's not a party trick. It's not a talent to be shown off or a gift to be praised. It is a holy inheritance, born of surrender and sharpened through suffering. There were days when she doubted that voice, times when she ignored the nudge, moments when she let logic silence her spirit. And she paid the price in tears, in turmoil, in spiritual bruises that no one saw. But those wounds became wisdom, and now she no longer waits for lightning to strike. She reads the clouds, she feels the wind, and when peace departs, she departs with it. That is not fear. That is not overthinking. That is faith refined by fire. The world may not understand she's being too sensitive. He seems nice. She's reading too much into it. But she doesn't explain. She doesn't defend. Because her protection doesn't require permission. And her discernment doesn't need validation. She's seen what happens when she doesn't listen. She's walked into traps that looked like answered prayers. She's held on to people who came wearing light but brought nothing but darkness. And so now, she listens when God stirs her heart in the middle of the night. When a name flashes across her mind for no reason. When a smile feels off, though the words sound right, she pays attention. This is not paranoia. This is prophetic posture. This is what it means to walk in step with the Spirit. And because of it, she is protected not always from the pain, but from the ruin. Not always from the storm, but from the drowning. She doesn't move based on what her eyes can see. She moves based on what her spirit senses. She doesn't ask, "What does this person look like?" She asks, "What does this spirit feel like?" She may walk slowly, but she walks safely. She may walk alone, but she walks with wisdom, and because of that she avoids the pits that were dug in secret. She escapes the snares that were laid in silence. She sidesteps destruction that was smiling at her from across the room. People wonder why trouble seems to miss her doorstep. Why her peace remains unshaken, why her path seems guarded. It's not luck, it's not coincidence, it's not because she's flawless, it's because she listens, it's because she obeys, it's because she values God's whisper more than human praise. The enemy cannot deceive her easily, the counterfeit cannot charm her, because her spirit has been trained to hear what eyes cannot see and to feel what words cannot express. So when you see her pause before a relationship, when she pulls back instead of pushing forward, don't rush her, don't question her. She's not hesitating, she's discerning. And a discerning woman, a spirit-led woman, is a fortress no evil can enter. This is her covering. This is her armor. This is the quiet power she carries in every step, in every decision, in every sacred pause, because she is not led by the world. She is led by the Word. And that, beloved, is what makes her dangerous to darkness and safe in the arms of God. She's surrounded by divine interventions. She no longer begs people to stay. There was a time she held on tightly, desperately, two hands that were already letting go. She made excuses for absence, defended betrayal, softened her voice, and shrunk her soul just to keep love from walking out the door. But that version of her is gone now. Now she understands that when God begins to remove, it's not punishment, it's protection. She no longer clings to confusion dressed as companionship. She doesn't call chaos chemistry anymore. She doesn't hold on to history when peace has already walked out of the room, because she knows not all connections are divine. Not every presence is a blessing. Some people enter your life as lessons, and when their lesson is complete, God writes the end even if your heart isn't ready to turn the page. She's learned that loss can be holy, that sometimes God answers her prayers not by adding, but by subtracting. And though it may sting, though her heart may ache in the silence, her spirit begins to dance in the freedom. She used to pray, Lord, make this work. Now she prays, Lord, remove what's not meant for me. And he does, quietly, thoroughly, faithfully. No announcements, no loud exits, just a divine rearranging of her atmosphere, and what others call rejection, she now calls redirection. What used to feel like abandonment now feels like mercy. Heaven's hand has intervened again and again, shielding her from what she couldn't yet see. She used to mourn every goodbye. Now she blesses it. She thanks God for every door that closed, for every name that faded, for every table she had to leave, because she's seen it the way God clears the room so he can sit with her in the silence. She's felt the shift, how the absence of the wrong people creates space for his presence to fill the room. And now when people leave, she doesn't chase, she doesn't explain. She doesn't lose herself trying to hold on to someone God has already released. Instead, she lifts her hands and says, thank you, Lord, for the rescue, because divine protection doesn't always look like angelic armies. Sometimes it looks like blocked calls and unanswered texts. Sometimes it sounds like silence after goodbye. Sometimes it feels like loneliness, but it's really heaven, making room for better. She doesn't see herself as abandoned anymore. She sees herself as surrounded by grace, by angels, by the kind of love that doesn't wound. She's not losing, she's being preserved. She's not rejected, she's being refined. And the empty space beside her, it's not a void, it's a seat being prepared for purpose, for promise, for the divine. She has unshakable faith in the storm. They tried to bury her. They used betrayal like shovels. They whispered in shadows, planted lies like weeds, and turned their backs in her darkest hour, thinking she would break under the weight of silence. They mistook her stillness for surrender, but they didn't know. She was rooted too deep to die. What they didn't understand was this: you cannot bury a woman who was planted by God. She bloomed anyway. Not because she's invincible, but because she is held by invisible hands, strengthened by unseen power, kept by a love that never lets go. Yes, she has fallen more times than most will ever see. She's crumbled under pressure, wept on cold floors, trembled under betrayal's sting. But every time she falls, grace reaches down like a hand in the dark and lifts her again. She does not rise in her own strength. She rises in mercy. She stands not because she is unbroken, but because God is her mender. When her voice is stolen, when gossip paints her with colors she never chose, when slander tries to choke the truth, she no longer defends herself. She lets silence speak. And oh, how it speaks. Her stillness carries authority. Her peace unsettles the enemy. Because nothing confuses darkness more than a woman who does not respond in rage, but in rest. And when her joy is threatened, when life tries to steal her song, when sorrow knocks like an old friend, she does not crumble. She chooses joy anyway. Not the fleeting kind that depends on circumstances, but the sacred kind that is rooted in eternity. She has walked through fire, not once, not twice. Over and over she has stepped into seasons that scorched her soul and tested her faith. But every time she came out different, refined, radiant, unshaken, not because the fire didn't burn, it did. It consumed the illusions, the lies she believed, the things that were never meant to go with her, but the presence of God was with her in the flames. And that changed everything. The fire didn't destroy her, it revealed her. It uncovered the gold hidden within. It stripped away the fear, the doubt, the dependency, and left behind a woman who knows who she is and who she is. They still wonder how she made it, how she keeps rising, how she keeps smiling. It's not luck, it's not pretense, it's the quiet confidence of a woman who has been carried through the worst and now fears nothing. She's not immune to storms, she's just anchored. She's not without wounds, she's just healed in places you cannot see. And that is why, even when the winds howl and the world shakes, she stands. Because her faith isn't in what she sees, it's in who holds her steady. She embraces endings without fear. She no longer fears endings. Once upon a time, she did. She trembled at the thought of goodbyes, held tightly to people, places, and seasons that had long since expired. She confused longevity with loyalty, and staying with strength. But now she knows better. Now she honors the closing of a chapter as much as she once celebrated its beginning. She no longer mourns every closed door. Instead, she bows before it, whispers a soft thank you, and walks away with peace. In her steps, she has learned that not every ending is loss. Some are lifelines. She doesn't see closed doors as rejection anymore. She sees them as divine protection, as God's way of guiding her with gentleness, even when her heart doesn't understand. She has tasted the pain of holding on too long, of forcing what was meant to fall, of stretching herself to fit into places that once nurtured her but eventually began to shrink her. Let them call her cold now. Let them whisper that she moved on too fast. She's no longer concerned with perception. She remembers the days when she clung to what was slowly killing her, smiling while she suffocated, apologizing just to be allowed to stay. But now, She releases what no longer fits, what no longer feeds her soul, what no longer feels like peace. She no longer views departure as defeat. She sees it as direction. She walks away not with resentment, but with reverence for the timing of God, for the quiet guidance of His hand, for the sacred knowing that says, "This is over now, let it go." She has stopped begging for what is not meant to remain. She no longer wrestles with the pruning. Now, she trusts the hand behind it. She knows that every loss ordained by heaven makes room for something better, that every person who walks out is making space for someone more aligned, that every ending, though it may sting at first, is an invitation to grow. She doesn't resist the shift. She recognizes it. She respects it. She receives it where others tremble at change. She finds peace in it, because she has lived long enough to know that God never takes without purpose, and when He says, "Enough," it's always to protect, to prepare, to propel. She's not afraid of what comes next. She doesn't need to know all the answers. She just needs to know who is leading her, and that is enough. So when you see her walkaway.com/composed, perhaps even smiling, understand she is not running, she is not heartless, she is not numb, she is wise, she is healed. She is obedient, because when a woman stops fearing the end, she becomes unstoppable in her beginning. She's not easily deceived. She listens, but not the way the world listens. She doesn't just hear with her ears. She listens with her soul, with that sacred place within her where truth echoes long before it's spoken, where God whispers in ways words can't reach. She has learned that the voice of God isn't always loud. It doesn't always thunder from the heavens or arrive with flashing signs. Sometimes it settles in her spirit like still water. Sometimes it hushes her chaos instead of shouting over it. And when that divine stillness comes, she pays attention. She's no longer moved by pressure. She doesn't run with the crowd. She doesn't chase every open door just because it's open. She knows now, not all opportunities are heaven sent. Some are distractions dressed as blessings. Some are traps tied in ribbons. So she waits, not passively, but prayerfully. She waits for peace, the kind that passes understanding, the kind that steadies her breath and anchors her steps. She no longer confuses desire with direction. She's made that mistake before, followed the loudest voice, chose what glittered but didn't grow her, and it cost her more than time. Now, she discerns. She's tuned her spirit to recognize the difference between excitement and anointing, between what she wants and what God has willed. And when she hears that holy no, whether through a restless night, a tug in her heart, or the sudden stillness of peace withdrawing, she doesn't argue, she obeys, even when it hurts, even when she doesn't understand, even when others question her, because she's learned that delayed obedience can be just as dangerous as disobedience. She doesn't need signs and wonders to move now. Sometimes, all it takes is a quiet pause, a moment where her spirit says, "Wait, not yet, not this," and that's enough. The world may call her hesitant. They may label her cautious, too slow, too careful, too spiritual, but she is not moved by worldly timelines or cultural pressure to act quickly. She knows that quick doesn't always mean right, and loud doesn't always mean true. Heaven calls her wise because it takes strength to stand still when everyone else is rushing. It takes faith to say no when the door looks good but feels wrong. It takes discernment to choose stillness over stepping into something that could wound her soul. She's not fooled by flattering words anymore. She sees through charm without character, ministry without integrity, relationships without peace. She has trained her spirit through fire, through failure, through faith, and now she trusts the voice within more than the noise around her. She doesn't just want good things, she wants God things, and for that she will wait. She will listen. She will obey. Because when a woman walks with wisdom, she may be misunderstood by the world, but she is honored by heaven. She listens for God's voice in silence. She listens not with impatience, not with fear, but with a soul tuned to heaven's frequency. She has trained her spirit to recognize truth, not just any truth, but the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that rests quietly beneath the surface of things, waiting to be heard by a heart that knows how to be still. The world is loud. It shouts opinions from every corner. It demands answers, applauds reaction, and glorifies speed. But she has chosen another way. She has chosen the sacred rhythm of the pause. She knows the power of silence. Not the silence that wounds, but the silence that heals, that reveals, that reminds. She has discovered that God doesn't always speak in thunder. Sometimes, He whispers. And when He does, you must be quiet enough to hear. She no longer seeks answers in chaos. She doesn't chase signs in the sky. She leans into the stillness, where His voice comes like a breeze, gentle but undeniably present. In the hush, God surrounds her. In the waiting, He speaks. Not in panic, but in peace. Not with pressure, but with presence. She's learned the art of sacred listening, the kind that doesn't need volume to be persuaded, the kind that waits for clarity even when the world demands immediate action. She has stopped letting noise lead her. She no longer lets pressure dictate her path. Her decisions are not based on the urgency of others, but on the stillness of God within her. And in that stillness she is protected. Manipulators cannot control her anymore. She's been there, she's seen the masks, she's heard the flattery that hides intent, and she's watched how charm can become a weapon, but she is no longer easily swayed because she knows now true authority doesn't demand attention, it carries peace, and peace has become her compass. False prophets cannot fool her. They may come with impressive words, with scriptures on their lips but shadows in their hearts. But her spirit discerns. She listens beyond the sermon. She weighs the spirit behind the speech, and if it lacks the fragrance of heaven, she walks away. No explanation needed. She is not led by emotion. Though she feels deeply, she has learned not to follow every feeling. She has lived long enough to know that not every open door is divine, and not every yes is a blessing. She is led by revelation, by the quiet knowing that rests in her chest, by the divine nudge that says, not this, not yet, not him, and when it comes, she does not argue. She obeys, even when others don't understand, even when it looks foolish on paper, even when it costs her something she thought she needed. She trusts that God sees what she cannot. She believes that heaven's no is always rooted in protection, and his silence is never neglect its refinement. She has stopped rushing into things just because they glitter in the moment. She no longer needs validation to obey her spirit. She remembers the times she ignored the warning. She remembers the regret. So now, she listens more, and speaks less. She pauses long enough to let God lead. Her obedience is not about perfection, it's about posture. She stays postured to hear, to catch even the softest whisper of God's wisdom in her soul, and that posture has become her shield. Because when you walk closely with God, you don't just avoid disasters, you're preserved from distractions, you're guarded from missteps, you're hidden from attacks that were meant to destroy you. This is why she seems untouched by the chaos, why she can sit calmly when everything is shaking, why she smiles while others panic, because her footing isn't in the world, it's in the Word. And that word holds her together when everything else falls apart. Temptation cannot trick her, not because she's immune, but because she's aware. She knows that the enemy often wraps destruction in desire, and deception in delight, but she has trained her discernment. She's surrendered enough to know the difference between what's good and what's God. She doesn't just ask, does this feel right? She asks, does this align with what I know God has said to me? And if there's any doubt, she does not move, even if the opportunity is glittering, even if everyone else is running toward it. Even if her heart wants to say yes, if peace is absent, she waits, because to her, peace is permission, and silence is often the signal to stay still. She has come to love the waiting, not because it's easy but because it's sacred. It's in the waiting that she grows, it's in the stillness that she sees, it's in the hush that her roots deepen. She is not in a hurry. She no longer fears missing out, because she knows that anything sent by God will never require her to rush, to compromise, or to silence her intuition, and so she stays steady, and in that steadiness she becomes immovable. The storms come, but she is not swept away. The distractions arrive, but they do not detour her. She is focused. She is grounded. She is led. She no longer apologizes for her caution. She no longer explains her silence. She honors the pauses in her spirit because she knows they are divine. The world may not understand. They may call her overly cautious. They may mistake her stillness for stagnation. But heaven knows. Heaven sees. Heaven speaks, and she listens, because when a woman has trained her soul to hear God in the silence, she cannot be manipulated by noise. When she walks by revelation, she does not need reassurance from man. She has all the confirmation she needs, in the quiet peace that wraps around her like a mantle, in the gentle weight of God's hand guiding her every step. And that is why she is shielded not just from danger, but from distraction, not just from harm, but from haste. She is not perfect, but she is postured to hear, postured to trust, postured to obey, and in that posture she is surrounded by favor, by wisdom, by the Almighty Himself. She carries the presence of peace. She doesn't fight every battle. She doesn't rise to every insult or respond to every attack. Not because she lacks strength, but because her strength is sacred. Not because she couldn't speak, but because her silence is often louder than her words. You see, she has learned that peace is not passive. Peace is not weakness. Peace is not surrender. Her peace is power. It is her posture. It is her presence. It is her protection. She wears it like a fragrance, not sprayed on from the outside, but poured out from within. A perfume of stillness, trust, and divine confidence that lingers wherever she goes. Her peace enters the room before she does. People feel it. They may not know why, but when she walks in, something shifts. The atmosphere softens. The tension breaks. Hearts settle. Because she does not bring chaos. She carries calm. She is not a whirlwind of drama or noise. She is the eye of the storm still, centered, unshaken. And when she leaves, her peace remains. It clings to the air like the memory of music, a holy echo of what it feels like to be near someone who knows who she belongs to. Her peace is not performative. It doesn't demand to be seen. It just is quiet, radiant, undeniable, that she has discovered something the world is still chasing. Peace is not found in perfection. It is found in presence. Not the presence of people or applause or approval, but the presence of God. That is why she's unbothered by the noise. That is why she no longer explains herself to those determined not to understand her. She knows that peace isn't the absence of problems, it's the presence of God within them. It's not a life without waves, but a heart that floats even in deep waters. She's learned to be still while the winds howl, to stand tall when others stumble, to breathe slow when the pressure builds, not because she doesn't feel the tension, but because she trusts the one who holds the tension in his hands. Storms don't scare her anymore. They used to back when she thought peace meant no conflict, no heartbreak, no uncertainty, but life has taught her better. God has walked her through fire, and now she knows the fire may come, but it will not consume her. The winds may blow, but they cannot uproot her. Why? Because her roots go deep into grace. She knows who she is. She knows who she is, and that knowing is her shield. She has no need to defend her name in every room, no desire to clap back when misunderstood, no obsession with proving her worth to the unworthy, because peace has taught her this. Some battles are beneath her calling. Some arguments cost too much. Some opinions simply aren't worth her energy. So she lets them talk. She lets them wonder. She lets them misunderstand her in silence. Because the voice of her Father is louder in her heart than the noise of the crowd. Her peace makes her glow. It softens her gaze, steadies her hands, slows her speech. She's not in a rush to be right. She's not trying to win arguments. She's trying to win alignment. That's the difference. While others rush ahead, chasing recognition and racing deadlines, she walks slowly, not lazily but intentionally. She walks in step with heaven, because she knows that when God is with you, you don't have to run for what is already yours. This is why silence doesn't scare her. She used to fear the quiet, the empty room, the unanswered text, the nights with no voice but her own thoughts. But now, the silence has become her sanctuary, a sacred space where she meets with God, where she hears not the world's opinions, but her Father's affirmation. She has learned to sit with herself, to enjoy her own company, to sip tea with her soul and smile at the sound of stillness, not because she has everything figured out, but because she has found peace in the unfigured. She smiles even when alone, not a forced smile for show, but a soft, true one, because her joy is not tied to who stays or who leaves. It is tied to the one who never departs. She no longer needs a crowd to feel celebrated. She no longer needs company to feel comforted. She no longer needs validation to feel valuable. She is whole. She is held. She is home. Her peace doesn't shout, it settles. It doesn't dominate, it diffuses. And it is a threat to every force that thrives on confusion. The enemy cannot stand a peaceful woman because she cannot be baited. She cannot be manipulated. She cannot be moved off course by chaos. When the enemy tries to provoke her, she responds with stillness. When lies surround her, she leans into truth. When conflict invites her in, she stays seated at the table of peace and sets another place for grace. Her peace is not man-made. It is not fragile. It is not circumstantial. It is supernatural. It was forged in prayer, refined in silence, built on surrender. And because of that, it cannot be stolen by storms, shaken by seasons, or shattered by sorrow. So don't be fooled by her quiet. Don't mistake her calm for weakness. There is fire beneath her stillness, a holy flame that cannot be quenched. There is strength in her softness, a divine weight behind her gentle words. She carries the presence of peace, and that presence is power. Closing reflections and blessings. She belongs to God. She has walked through long valleys with only the moonlight to bear witness to her prayers. No spotlight, no crowd, just her whispered cries rising into the quiet night, and the faithful, the presence of the one who always listens. Yes, she has been broken, shattered by betrayal, bent beneath sorrow, bruised by the weight of life, but never abandoned, because even in her lowest moments, God never let go. Now when people glance her way and ask why is she always alone, they don't understand what she carries. They see her solitude and assume lack. But she knows she is never truly alone. She is accompanied by grace that never runs out, accompanied by mercy that rises with her each morning, accompanied by angels who war for her in silence, accompanied by the very presence of God who goes before her, walks beside her, and holds her upright. She no longer begs to be seen. She no longer chases what isn't meant for her, because she understands she does not need to prove anything when she's already chosen. She does not chase, she becomes. She does not shout, she shines. She glows with quiet confidence, moves with heavenly rhythm, and breathes peace like oxygen. Not because her life has been easy, but because her soul has been anchored. She doesn't try to fit in where she doesn't belong. She doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. She doesn't trade her calling for company, because when a woman knows who she is in God, she moves different, she talks different, she walks different. There's a hush around her life, not emptiness, but holiness, a divine stillness that speaks louder than noise. She doesn't need the world's permission to walk in purpose. Heaven has already given her a yes. She breathes peace, because the Prince of Peace lives within her. She lives free, because no chain formed against her has ever prevailed. She is no longer moved by applause or approval, no longer shaken by rejection. She has found her identity, not in opinions, not in titles, not in status, but in the unwavering truth that she belongs to God. And when a woman walks covered by that truth, when she's clothed in divine love, and shielded by unshakable purpose. There is no power in hell that can touch her. She belongs to the Lord, marked, sealed, kept. That is her banner, that is her blessing, that is her covering, and that, beloved, is the most divine protection of all.